Hello, everyone. It is Monday, the 29th of April, it's 2024, and I did not do a video yesterday. I might not do one this week or for the next month. I'm not going to be removing myself completely from these live streams. Well, I'm saying that now. I don't know, right? One day at a time. But it's going to be limited, obviously, because this week, I do have a lot to do. Just because I've been having very interesting conversations with very important people that I didn't have an audience with prior to recently. Very important conversations and stuff like that. And why I'm saying this is because there are people that are seen as, analysts or journalists or truth seekers or whistleblowers, whatever you want to call it, that are doing their regular, what we're seeing as their jobs, like that, like you're seeing like the content that they're sharing on their social media and the live feeds, but you're not seeing what goes on behind the scenes. So even last night, super late, I was talking to Jaron, and he and I were talking about really high, like important things, right? And sharing information and stuff like that. And the reason why I'm saying that is because he, I respect him so much, and he is so friggin' smart. So being able to bounce information off someone like him, to me, is an asset, obviously, that I would definitely use, like, if I can. And he's always working, and that's my point to that as well. And so he does great videos, groundbreaking, life-altering videos all the time. And I wish that he was a rich billionaire by this point for the information that he's sharing, just because there's celebrities and athletes. I'm not hating on them, but I'm just saying that make so much money, like millions and millions of dollars. So like, why are the people like Eric Dubé and Mark Sargent and Dave Weiss and Jaron and Austin and others I'm obviously missing, but why are they not rich and famous yet? But I think it's coming. That's why I'm alluding to what I'm going to be getting into. InfoWars, they actually had on Austin, and Joe Rogan actually had on Bart Sabrell, moon landing documentary individual who has, like, he's built like the best footage, interviews, data analysis from experts, and his own interpretations of different events and stuff like that. Second to none, I think, at this point. I mean, that we're aware of, right? And Joe Rogan had the friggin' parts to put him on his friggin' show, which to me is incredible, right? Like, and people don't understand how ballsy that is, and like that's really, really frustrating as well. People are like, oh, like, who cares, like, whatever. Joe Rogan is actually risking his life doing things like that. Okay, Sabrell risking his life sharing this information. It's not like I'm saying this because it happens. It's a fact. We share this literally like daily or weekly in our industry, like under, like, on Signal or Telegram or lower means, right? That people are meeting untimely deaths in this industry, like in various industries, but like, we all like kind of like work together, right? Like, I'm more government, and Jaron is more exposing government. So we're working together because, like, there's also people within government that are trying to get information to people that are at the top of the government chain, and they're not listening, but they should be. So like, I've actually shared things from Austin, Witsit, and Jaron with people that are high level government, and blew their minds, right? And this is what made them more open to having discussions and meetings and stuff like that. Was it's very much because of people like that and the debates that they put together. And just how smart they are, how much they still, even like last night, like, and he probably stayed up even later than that, talking to people all over the world as well, right? But like, still going in and doing research and analysis and stuff like that before. Anyway, I also wanted to talk about Lara Logan, just because like that was a pretty intense video, and I ended on kind of like a note where I shouldn't have ended it on, so yeah, I wanted to circle back and just say, like, sometimes when I watch things that elicit emotional responses, that happens. It doesn't last long anymore, just because I'm not being chronically triggered like I was in my old house that I had to move from. But, it still happens when I'm talking about certain things. And that's what I was going to get into as well. Like even for Lara Logan, it was very hard for her, obviously, to have that conversation. And it was necessary. And and that's her falling on her sword, right? So like, people are saying like, oh, she shouldn't have been there and all this stuff. And I don't mean to say it like that, like, but I got that a lot. And so I actually made my YouTube video private. It's still on Rumble, but I took it off X as well, because like, I'm like so many people are again, like, shaming her or like missing the point entirely. And that's why I guess you're missing the point entirely with my videos as well. You know, and I don't mean to be like I don't mean to sound a certain way, but she knew she shouldn't have been there at that time in that situation. That's why, even though it's very fucking traumatic and there's a lot of stigma surrounding something like that, right? That she's dealing with even now. People are like, oh, she shouldn't have been there. She was a journalist. She was brave. She was thinking she was doing her job. She was doing her job. Okay. And that's, and she's letting people know, okay, because it's fucking awful and tragic what happened, but she's saying that so that it doesn't happen to other fucking people. All right. So that people are aware that this fucking happens, falling on her fucking sword. And even though, again, like she blocked me, I don't know why, because we've never met before or talked before as well. I don't know. Maybe she's like because she's in the industry too, like sort of in my industry, right? Like obviously, like she probably has some of the same fucking intel, right? Or communicate, like contacts. We probably have the same contacts, but again, I've never met her or talked to her. It might be triggering also, right? She might want to separate because it's hard. It's something that she dealt with that was very hard. And I get that as well. And she probably doesn't talk about it or think about it a lot. She dissociates from it, but like she thought it was very important to get it out there. Extremely vulnerable, you know, like again, all that stuff with the kid, with people's stigma around these things. And that's why, like, I teach the courses like the hostile environment awareness course, the standing rapid deployment team courses that has like a contact after capture piece in it, that has like making yourself a hard target. And talking with teams, like, and I said, like I was offering these courses to media and journalists as well, because they all travel to the same areas. They fucking need this more than anyone. Okay. Because like they're also in dangerous areas and they don't have the same training that we do. And they're doing dangerous things, silly things. And I'm not saying that she was doing silly things. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying I've seen it all over the place. And, or even, you know, like diplomats or attaches, right, doing stupid things. And I mean, no offense in that. Or like people that are global affairs or CSIS or Homeland Security or FBI or CIA. Like, and I mean, no offense, but like people like doing stupid fucking things. A lot of people doing smart things. And warrior types, right? People that are trying to be of service, trying to expose, you know, things that are going on in the, like in the world that are not fucking great, again, so that people can learn from this as well. And getting shit on. Are you fucking kidding me? She shouldn't have been there. She knows that. Like at that time, do you think that she wouldn't fucking take that back? Do you think that she wouldn't fucking take that back? So like that's not helping the victim. Like, and she doesn't even come across as a victim at all. Just to be clear, she struggled to get through it, and so that's why I was circling back to that. Is that it's likely something that she shuts out of her brain, through just to get on with life, right? But knowing that it's something that's important, right? Lessons learned, you know, after you do the after action report and assessments and stuff like that. And that's why. And so very brave, very courageous thing to do. And just like, anyway. And so even with Annalise Shamoun, for example, she, you know, is obviously someone like I consider to be brave and courageous to speak out on something, again, not her fault. And this wasn't a case where she was in her own home, in her own bed, right, on multiple occasions. But there's that stigma, right, especially with her as an officer. Like there is a stigma, like surrounding that stuff, and that's what needs to be addressed, not societal sexism or things like that. But anyway, so I did want to circle back to that just because I thought it was very important. And when people are going through and telling people, I think, difficult situations, and you're seeing that they're struggling through it, you're like, people should obviously understand that they're not looking for attention. They're not looking for, like, they don't even want to fucking say it, and they're only saying it so that it doesn't happen to someone else. And I said that about 5 times. And so I will leave it with that. But flat earth debate, I guess Austin was saying that, not to me, like, I'm just like, this is his channel. I haven't watched the whole thing yet. I'm not going to go through the whole 4 hours because I have a lot of stuff to do today, but I just want to show you as well that like people are trying different approaches, different angles. So Austin went on one InfoWars. So he, like he says, he took one for the team, knowing that it was like media that would be like on a show that's not in his favor, right? Like, so he's going on someone else's platform. He's going against someone that's like very popular on InfoWars. And and debating on that platform, right? And so like it could have been taken any way, he could have been edited anyways, it could have been shown anyway. And I was even saying that like I was making comments as well, and there was comments getting deleted. I was putting comments from off the live feed. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to do it in the comment section. I would like reload and stuff like that, and I would see like can't see my comments at all, and that was to help the feed. And so that's another thing when flat earthers are debating live on other channels. I think that instead of, and this is just my humble opinion, I think instead of watching these live feeds on other flat earth channels, people should be watching them on the channels that these flat earthers are on, or these like, not a globe earthers are on, and like and make comments like give arguments if you can for like why you think the earth is flat and stuff like that in the live feed, because then it's there on record unless they delete it, and in the comments, because that helps, right? Because like a lot of people are even hired to troll these live feeds and stuff like that for the globe earth side. Even with Craig and these guys, it's like the same things happen. And even politicians, like they pay people to be social media influencers for them. They pay them to be propagandists, and they pay them to attend meetings and rallies and conventions, or they force them to, right? They'll go to schools, like even high schools and universities, and people will be like forced, like be in the background sitting there. They don't even want to be there because they don't even like the guy. Yeah. Some people are saying hello everyone. I know it's early. And so yeah, Austin 1,000% took one for the friggin' team. Are you kidding me? Like international TV, like live TV, huge viewership, and he had the balls to go on the friggin' show, and again at risk to himself. We all know the risks, and he did incredibly well, obviously, and he wasn't pushing like the technical stuff, and he explains why as well. And I totally think that how he approached this was actually really friggin' brilliant. And that's why people were like saying about my debate with Craig. I said I've debated flat Earth, and I've shown my own arguments for it for years. I'm like, that debate going into it, I said even before the debate, like it's out there. Like I said it on my videos and my social media, that he's going to be insulting, he's going to be dismissing evidence, he's going to be like all of that stuff, and so that's his viewers. And that's what they enjoy, right? They like when you look at the comments and the feedback on his channel and MC Toon and Ozian and all these people, it's all just insults, right? It's all low level intellect. Like not intellect, I say that loosely, and I don't mean any offense. But when you look on other people's pages, like Jaren or Sovereign Soul, Mind Unchained, or Mark Sargent, like Eric Dubé, you name it, great conversations. Comments are like they're insightful, that it's bringing more value added and stuff like that, like bringing more to the conversation and not insulting and things like that. And so people should see that for what it is. And so I was going into that debate knowing that there would be they'd have a lot more of his side wanting to watch because of me being a female and stuff like that as well, and ready to friggin' pounce. But I was playing more of his game, so I was doing the Mockingbird, like I was playing Mockingbird. And I said that, and so like I was doing that, like whatever. Like I could be very professional. I've commanded high level operations overseas and all that other stuff. I can do that, but I can also mock people when the game plan is to try to get people interested that wouldn't necessarily be interested if I was just talking about facts and science and technical data and just droning on and not bringing a little spice to the conversation, right? With the eye rolling and the, oh my God, or like, oh, you're a nuclear engineer. Psh, you know what I mean? Like a little bit of insults, like digs and jabs and stuff like that is fighting them, sort of, you know what I mean, on their at their level to appeal to their audience to a certain degree, but not so much where you're selling your soul, right? And so, yeah, did it seem immature for my interview for a lot of people at the academic level? Sure, I was still bringing in facts and physics and actual like real data, measurable, repeatable, observable data, but I was also having fun with it. Not fun, but I was again, a bit of it was a show, and just like Austin, and he'll explain why.
Society gives us a skill. We ain't about that mainstream. That what's popular ain't true. What's true ain't popular. Flip. Miss Witsit in the house. We come through it with some sharp. We cut right through. We don't follow trends. We got our own groove. Breaking the mold, making the move. We ain't about that fake facade and switch. We stand proud in our eye when we see through the
government.
and love to defy society's standards. We're gonna fly. Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Austin has a good intro too. It's very calming. He's gonna start any minute now. There we
In a
go.
world. What up, doe fam? All right, so we had technical difficulties last night. Wasn't supposed to be, but here we are. I'll try to make sure the audio stays pretty good. I've had some people complain about that, but yeah, so we're going to cover the quote unquote debate on InfoWars. I did a quote unquote part 1, but it was really just playing the intros and then kind of explaining to people my approach. People still are like in the chat right then, you know, no offense, but that was terrible. You could have done better and all this stuff. And
Rude.
you know, respectfully, I don't care about that opinion. I'm open to feedback and critique always, right? But I talked to many people that know me a lot beforehand. I told everyone that's what I was going to do.
Exactly.
I let people know I was going to wear kid gloves. I was going to optimize amicability, meaning keeping it amicable, of course, to ensure future appearance, or at
Exactly.
least optimize the chance of future appearance with an actual moderator. I knew there were commercial breaks. I knew he was hosting the show. I knew he would be in control of how the show went. I knew if I became very assertive and named fallacies and
Yep.
really just went all out, that normally people get triggered. I didn't want him to dig his heels in too hard publicly. I didn't want to have the other Globe Earthers get in emotionally invested and get triggered and dig their heels in.
Right.
I basically took one for the team. That's what I did, where I answered all the questions in good faith, even though I didn't have to. They were all diversions and stuff. We're going to get into it. But yeah, and honestly, people should send him. We'll cover a lot of the stuff.
Yes.
I still tip my hat to him, just like I told him afterwards, for having the conversation, for pointing out the obvious elephant in the room, which is that there's a huge crossover in audiences, that everyone that typically debates me or other flat earthers are super arrogant and Bill Nye wannabes and super condescending, and that flat earthers aren't stupid.
Yep.
And for just having the conversation, right? I think in a way he kind of got trapped into it, but he went through with it. I tip my hat to him. I don't have beef with him. So yeah, there's that. We're going to get into all the specifics, but I kind of covered that part of it in the first one, so you can check that out. That wasn't a debate. There wasn't a moderator. And I've been through too many of these where I see the coolest people. It pulls the worst out in the coolest people, bro, especially publicly. And since there was no moderator, it automatically couldn't have been a debate. So my intention was to just pique the curiosity of people that have put it off, to dispel the notion that we're uninformed or we're stupid, and to just kind of create this new vibe where it doesn't have to be like this all-out toxic battle. And it seems like a lot of quote unquote flat earthers have become desensitized to that. And there are certain people in the community they watch that act like that. And I think that the new wave needs to move past that. I feel like I had intuitive confirmation that this was going to be a huge year before any of this happened. I told everyone that listens to me or keeps up with me on X or in Discord that. And I think I have a responsibility to act a certain way, to carry myself a certain way, and to not prioritize ego, etc. So some people said they really liked how I did. Some people said they didn't. Some people have seen me just like be super lethal with the logic and just exposing everything. And I get that's what people were longing for. But I want to save that for an actual moderated debate where he has more time to prepare. We have specific talking points, etc. Even in that debate, we're going to cover it clearly. What was happening was my point was kind of being dismissed, and then we were being led into commercial break. What can you do? Yeah, it is what it is. So we're going to just cover the debate, and we'll get into the specifics. If you're new.
Yeah, I just want to say again, I need to reiterate this. Like, I was so impressed at like when I was watching it. I agreed with everything he's saying. Like, I was tracking more like that. That's not a debate. Like, that's just him planting seeds or getting people to be interested in it, right? And not scaring people off, right? Because there's a lot of ego, and he's right. Without a moderator, like I've had conversations with people where like the amazing, incredible people, super calm, super patient, all of it, and this stuff really does bring out the worst in people. It really does, and so live. That's why I'm saying, like, I don't think people like MC Toon or Craig or Ozian would ever admit to being wrong for anything live because of ego. And I mean, no offense in that, like it could change, they can change their approach, right? And actually think through the information that people continuously give them on a regular basis to try to help them. They don't realize that people that reach out or respond to them, like from like the higher level echelons I'm talking. So like Jaron also, and he said this on his video that I caught up on last night, just because I had like a freaking like back-to-back days of like freaking like hours of intense conversation with high level government people about really important things, and I haven't even scratched the fucking surface. So I have a lot more, like even like anyway, I have a lot more information and stuff like that to and meetings, and it's likely going to be again like for the next friggin' year, just like Austin. And so you can't like you can't make people run away, and that's why even with Joe Rogan, with getting Sabrell on for that, like the moon landing hoax, like it's he just shared that as well. And this is just more of, you see that this was lied about, and you understand, the thought process, and surrounding it and who was involved and stuff like that. And then you can understand, right, that there's more to it than that, right? It doesn't just stop there. There's a lot that I don't want to say on with YouTube. Yeah, this is what I mean. Like, but it's not Austin that people have a problem with, or Witsit. It's like he's like a friggin' Jedi Knight when it comes to like managing debates and conversations. Very impressive. But I'm talking with people with conversations that are like bring out the best, bring out the worst in people, but also it's like high level intellectual stuff and intelligence, right? Because you can be book smart and like not street smart, and you need both. You absolutely need both. And that's what I mean. Like, that's why he got on InfoWars, before someone like me, obviously. And I'm not ashamed to admit that, right? Like, I'm also like, I'm doing my own research and reading and stuff like that. I've said that, right? But for the approach, I'm leaning towards people like, Austin, right? Like, as someone that I'm looking at and seeing, like, it's very impressive how he, how he responds and interacts under pressure. And so to me, he's like another warrior type. And Eric Dubé as well, whether he does yoga and is vegan or not. Like, to me, he's a warrior, right? And all the world, Florida as well. Dr. Narco Longo, because they're brilliant and they have balls, right? Like, what they're sharing, I'll reiterate, gets people, with questionable deaths. Yeah, this is a great title for Austin. He really is. And so even when people, I would say like people that are not tracking what he's doing, like they're judging him wrongly. But when people are understanding where he's coming from, people that have like the human behavior, like an analysis piece like under their belt and stuff like that, and can understand, key leader engagements, has done them overseas or has done them like as a liaison officer for whatever, I could see, I know what he's doing. Like, he's reading his opponent on the fly. Brilliant. And he's managing the flow of the conversation and then the level or degree of emotional responses there is in the energy in the room, and doing that live, and then doing it like from opposite ends of a friggin' like wherever they were, like they're not in the same room, right? Very impressive yet again. And so I have to admit that, or reiterate that again, and not having props or charts or diagrams or reference materials to pull up and stuff like that to show.
You here, welcome.
I'm rambling.
I think that this is very important to kind of share out there once we go through this, because a lot of people after watching that are going to have questions. If they're intellectually honest, they're going to be like, wait, what was he saying? Is that true? Harrison was just saying, nah. If you watch it like needing flat earth to be wrong and you have this huge bias, you're not ready for the conversation anyway.
Mhm.
If you're a truther and you know truth doesn't fear investigation, then you're going to go look into the information further. So there's kind of the meta, and we're just going to jump right into it because it'll probably end up still taking a while. We're going to skip the intros. We covered the intros earlier. He kind of just gave his general idea and sentiment about the conversation, and I, out of respect and good faith, did the same thing. I could have used that 10 minutes to just been like da 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 da, and maybe if I will concede anything, maybe I should have done that. But I wanted to break through the cognitus and show people that the psyop narrative is coping, all these other talking points is coping. You know, it really comes down to falsifications independent of replacement. I gave the adoption analogy. I wanted people to be in a receptive mindset when we continue the conversation. So you may disagree with how I did it, but I will say I put a lot of thought into how I did it. Not one thing I did was
not calculated,
like not tactically approached. And
I saw that.
I mean, whatever, right? I mean, obviously there's going to be
For what I saw the video.
quarterbacks. There's going to be the people that are much more toxic and aggressive with their approach, saying they should have been up there or whatever. I don't care about any of that. So let's get.
And that's another thing. I'll give credence to InfoWars 100% for their first guest to have on. It's a credence to them. This is what I mean as well. So I humbly say it as well, like with InfoWars and with Alex Jones and whoever this guy was that was he was debating. I don't know what his name is. I don't really know who he is. I think I might have seen like clips that he's done, but anyway, it's a testament to the fact that they're genuinely interested and they're bringing on like the hard hitters first, right? So someone like Eric Dubé or Austin or Jaron or Mark or Dave, etc. Like I said, the same, people, and there's probably other people out there that are better and that I just don't know of. I'm not tracking, and there's others, like I said, but instead of other people, right? Like these are the good people to get. And so even with Joe Rogan, like with these with the moon landing hoax documentary, because like Matt Wallace was ratioed and stuff like that, so they're getting pressure to have these guests on now, right? Because they're getting ratioed now. And that's a good thing, right? So this war that people like want to have, right? Like it's not supposed to be physical, in my humble opinion. That comes from a friggin' warrior, right? It's supposed to be something that's fought intellectually, academically, and peacefully, and patiently and calmly, because it's already enough, right? Like people they're going to be having their foundations completely crumbled underneath of them, right? Like we all went through these awakening experiences. It's not an easy process, and it takes a little while to process and down regulate and all that stuff. And I'm rambling again, but they're trying to help too, right? They're throwing us a bone here. So Joe Rogan was absolutely throwing us a bone, 1,000%, and so was InfoWars. And so I hope people are seeing that. I'm being redundant again, but I hope that people are seeing that. They could have brought on anyone. There's so many people, and they could have brought on the biggest crackpots to completely dismiss any form of conversation being pushed further or entertained. All right. And so give friggin' credit where credit is due. And Joe Rogan, like he just posted a friggin' video yesterday or the day before. 18 years old. This guy did a friggin' standing friggin' spinning kick. Start of a friggin' fight with this guy. Like literally just like start whatever the whistle goes, or start standing friggin' kick, knock the friggin' guy out, and then just walks away like whatever, it's done. So that was really impressive. You should watch that video.
Get into the debate, and I will reiterate this point. Keep this in mind, right?
Eddie Bravo, he's good too, but because I think because of the connection, I don't know, like there's some kind of bias with Joe Rogan and Eddie Bravo, with talking flat earth stuff. So I think it would have to be someone else being brought in, and then having maybe Eddie there as well to discuss. And I know he's done it before, but I think this year is the year.
Falsification is independent of replacement. If I found
why not now?
a file in my parents' closet that says that, it turns out I was adopted my whole life. I thought they were my real parents. They told me they were my real parents. I had no reason to question that. Everyone in my town and in my church and in my school all assumed they were my real parents, acted like they were my real parents. I didn't know anything about it. If I came up to you and said, dude, you'll never believe what I just found out. My whole life is a lie. I'm actually adopted. And then you said, wait, what are you talking about? You can't be adopted. everyone knows those are your parents. I mean, do you think that everyone at your church and your school and the town meetings, you think everyone's in on the lie? I would say no, obviously not. They also believe the lie. They believe those are my parents. Why wouldn't they? And then you said, well, who are your real parents? Then I said, I don't know. I want to find out. Trust me. That's the next step. I just know that they're not my parents, I haven't figured out who my real parents are. And then you respond by saying, well, I'm not going to believe that those are not your real parents until you can tell me who your real parents are. I would just think that you were being ridiculous and illogical and didn't know how basic logic worked, because falsification of the fact that they were supposedly my parents is independent of me replacing it with who my parents actually are. So I think that's very important. I said what always I even said this in the opener. I said it's crazy that people watched it and claimed I lost or whatever. It wasn't even a real debate, but if you really listen to what I said, right, in the opener, I said what typically happens, and I tried to be as good faith as possible. This is important for me to reiterate this before we start. I said what normally happens, and I understand because most people have a similar response. When you first hear it, you just want to know how everything would work. So you're like, well, how would this work if the Earth's flat? Well, what about this? What about that? How would that work? What's the moon? Blah, blah, blah. And that's very illogical. And if you are presented with this understanding and continue to do that, you're being intellectually dishonest.
Yep.
And whether that be with me or whoever you're talking or just yourself, that's sad. That's a sad state of mind. So that's what the conversation was. That's what it always is. And there's this gross double standard in the conversation, and we'll get into it. But if a flat earther doesn't know one answer, right, then somehow the Earth becomes a globe again. But when the globe Earth, with billions of dollars of funding, thousands of universities, hundreds and hundreds of years, the world's governments, etc., the whole population believing it, still can't answer basic, fundamental, foundational questions or aspects and have no answers for their model. That's just science. That's how it works, you stupid flurf. We learn things as we go. But when a flat earther doesn't know a question as a group that's basically going against the grain and being super censored and suppressed and attacked and misrepresented and, divided, if we haven't answered every question there is way more than this other side, somehow it becomes true again. That's why it's important to understand falsification is independent of replacement. Falsification is independent of replacement. Very simple 5-word phrase. Okay. So we're going to get back into it. And in the opener, I said it comes down to 2 primary points, and that is curvature and motion. Is the surface of the Earth curving at a rate consistent with the sphere with a radius value that they claim of 3,959 miles? I'll try not to go too fast. And is the Earth actually rotating? That's something else I try not to do. If you're new to this channel, you'll find out that I kind of get into like a flow. And
thank you for that. Again, always friggin' helping. Harrison was his name. Okay.
I'll go kind of quickly. I'll start using some technical terms you may not be familiar with. I will try to always double back and explain them if I can tell I'm getting a bit technical, and I try to monitor how fast I go, but it just is what it is. I tried to be really slow in that debate as well. So, and this is what's so funny about it is last thing I'll say, I was wearing kid gloves, meaning that I was not getting super technical. I wasn't just slicing him up with all the specific technical terms and scientific aspects. And that's just a fact. I was literally saying, I don't want to get too technical. You can listen to me and know, if you've watching my stuff, that I was doing that. This idea that I didn't
watch the whole thing. I actually, when I was doing my live stream, I live streamed it for a bit. And so that's all I've watched of it. And with this, I was only a few more minutes in before I stopped it so that I can do a live with you guys and share this, because this to me is also information gathering and making assessments on how to interact with people from the big hit shows now, or podcasts, whatever you want to call it, and just see how to approach it. Right. And you're right. From what I saw, he was bringing in the stuff that's friggin' oh my God, it's 101. If he would have done any research, actual research, and not just how to debunk flat Earth, then he would have got there. And so to us, he looked incredulous. He looked a little bit, ill prepared and misinformed, really misguided and misinformed, in my humble opinion. People who are more academic or more science thought based. I don't know how to explain it. we're more direct and we're seen as being bitchy or assholes. And like, that's also unfortunate because like I don't know, I don't necessarily think it's bitchy so much as like being direct or being a little bit like intense, I guess. And that's based on my background and stuff like that as well. But yeah, like the guy was bringing in like old, easily debunked globe proofs. Like that's not how I can prove at all. That's like oh my God. Anyway,
got destroyed and all that stuff is just major cope, but
yeah,
it's all good. So we're going to get into it, and I'll actually pull it up this time instead of continuing saying that. So I'll bounce back and forth from me being on the screen, me not being on the screen. You guys can tell me what you like more. Slower cadence is helping with comprehension. Yeah, but some people say that they don't like it. There is no way to appease everyone. I learned that a long time ago. That's why I'm really not fazed by conflicting feedback. Some people are like, why did you go so easy? Some are like, I'm so glad you slowed it down, trying to make sure you were digestible for the audience. A lot of people saw what I was doing. A lot of people want to hate no matter what. So it's all good. I guess if I don't just scream about celestial navigation over and over, then I must not be as good as other people or something. And we all have our own approaches. Okay. Let's pop in. And of course you can donate to the stream at kofi.com/Witsit. If some of the mods.
Yeah. You know what? There's even more, like there's more than 44 documents from the government saying it's flat. And that's a good point. There's so many documents out there that even I've shared. I've done follow-up videos of, that's all I'm showing is literally like documents from army archived army publications, from NASA, from science institutes, from like the aerospace institutions, like all like archived and open source, declassified, unclassified information. So even myself, and I've saved like a few like of the like just to refer to from time to time, just to show people that there's a lot of government documents out there. You just have to know how to find them. So if you're just searching on Google on a safe search, you're not finding any information about anything. And I hate to break it to you, like you're literally censoring yourself. So when I do my searches, for example, I have a VPN. I use Proton, and I have an upgraded package, and I make it where there's no tracking of cookies or that's like the malware stuff like that. Like I'm on top of that stuff on my phone and any device that I use, and it's important. And I make sure that I know that Canada, like right now, because of our censorship bills, ridiculous stuff. Like we're dealing with like communist dictatorships right now in Canada and other areas of the world, but doing nothing about it. Anyway, so I would disconnect from Canada, and I would connect to the US or Iceland, or just as examples, to get information that I wouldn't be getting because I'm in Canada and I'm Canadian, and so. And so there's that aspect of it. So if people in the high ranking government, like if people in cabinet and stuff like that, and by the way, I teach this on my course, like the first 2.5-3 days is theoretical. And then the 2.5 days, there's actually practical, where like people are actually, like I'm doing scenarios, running them through, like I've said, using crisis actors and role players. But it's, again, non-disclosures are signed. And even though I've used scenes where there's like massive casualties, or like how to deal with dead bodies and repatriate them, all of that stuff, it was all nothing leaked, nothing utilized to dupe anyone. And it was very much explained what we were doing. And so like not douchebags like Ray Epps, like trying to get people to friggin' like, start riots. Like it's the opposite, right? Train as you fight, but don't use that training in order to lie to people or deceive people, and things like that. So you have to be very aware of this stuff. It's very important. I don't know where I was going with this, but I forget.
Mods can actually put like type a message that says donate to the stream, here. I'll pin the chat. It's also in the description. You can also go to witsitgets.com, and it's on there as well. All right. I have an embed donate on witsitgets.com, so you can just donate directly through there if you would like. Cool. Let's get into it. Let's just start with this.
I lost my paper that says it, but that's right? Well, yeah, at Witsit gets it. Okay. So yeah, open discussion time. Obviously, we both brought a bunch of stuff in our opening statements.
Sorry, like I'm obsessed with gematria and numbers. And so I see that Austin's following 38 people. And so you've got 3 times 8's 27. So he's got the 27 in there. And then he's got the 1 as well, like 1 subscription. Like, and so like like I talk about 1207 all the friggin' time, where it's even like with my last 4 digits of my phone. Anytime I've ever changed my phone number, even though the area code changes and stuff like that, like I've always made it where like my last 4 digits has some kind of like those numbers in various order, right? And even addresses and things like that. And I've talked about 9/11 with towers 1, 2, and 7 going down, and then it being called ground zero, and multiple other things. But just interesting that he's got that. Doesn't surprise me.
I guess to me, again, every debate I've watched from Flat Earth sort of has the same paradigm, the same dynamic. It's somebody like yourself that's arguing for Flat Earth, and then there's like the Bill Nye the Science Guy, Neil deGrasse Tyson wannabe. And frankly, I don't really care about the scientific arguments as
the
much.
guy that's dressing exactly like they do. With the glasses and the suit and the tie, like that's what they wear.
When it comes to
Bill Nye's the only one that wears the bow tie, like Neil deGrasse and Buzz and all these liars and these actors, they all pretend that they're like professionals and academics and intellectuals, and with the glasses and and the pipes and the, whatever. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
whether experiments are valid or whether the physics checks out. I really do just go down to like basic observation and logic and what would be necessary.
You don't care about the science or the technical aspects of the conversation. Well, I don't. I mean, I took that as a white flag. Okay, yeah. I'm just being honest. I was trying to be considerate.
Necessary to cover this sort of thing up, and we can get into the psyop aspect in just a little bit. But
he was setting it up just like is it Andrew Nichols or whatever it was from CBC. He was reading off a script, right? So I'm not even blaming him. Whoever wrote the article completely misrepresented what I said, completely said the opposite of what I said in that video. And so that happens all the time. And I said, you have to prepare for that. That's why you have to go further than just reading the article, watch videos, look at other sources and do that. And then, but the way he was setting the scene for me to respond, again, I didn't have long to prepare at all, it was all negative regarding the Canadian Armed Forces, the military, and about right wing supremacy and stuff like that, and saying that this guy was like a recruiter and giving me information that if I didn't do a little bit of research prior to, then I would have believed him, right? Like he's saying, oh shit, this guy was like a recruiter involved in the recruiting process and involved in this white supremacy group and all this other stuff, and it's all coming at people. So if you're naive and duped into believing everything that you're being fucking told, even if it's live TV, because you're stressed about that too. And I was wearing braces at the time, and so I was that was also in the back of my mind. With I won't be able to properly enunciate my words and I'll be slurring. I'm but it's important because out of that whole conversation, the article that was utilized, they were getting these experts, okay, even people that I went to RMC with and stuff like that, that are teaching law and things like that, and security for heads of military institutions. I was going against their narrative. All of those people, I was the only one on the side of that this is societal and this is due to mainstream media and other things, and anyways, I was painting the picture completely different than what they were, and so of course they tried to hide it, right? So I'm surprised they even let the video be released, but they have no choice, right? And I'm sure they archived it now, so you'd have to go on the Wayback Machine or again get on a VPN in order to even see my video, because I've shared the video before as well multiple times to people in Canada. Again, I made that in 2019 pre-COVID, and people can't even see the video here, so they just can't see the link, and so and it is what it is.
The moon is a sphere, right? Can we agree on that? Because I mean, to me, it's pretty undeniable. The moon is in fact a sphere that we can all see. Do you agree with that? It's
a circle. I'll agree with that. And spheres could be half. Spheres could be. How you see them, right? Like the two-dimensional base is what's important. So even cones can have a circular two-dimensional base, and cylinders and even half balls and stuff like that. And so we've only ever seen 50% of the moon. So a two-dimensional fucking object. Think about this, people. And so it likely fixed within the firmament or fixed in its position. And again, I'm not even saying it's not some kind of an orb. I'm not saying that. I've said that some kind of sonoluminescence creation, degassed elements, using hot fusion and cold fusion. I don't want to go down too many rabbit holes with this stuff, the technical stuff or the science stuff, but But right out the get-go, he's saying, okay, and that's what pisses me off too, because even with the moon, why is he like lying about the moon? Or saying like inconsistencies, and also like the shape of the moon is unrelated to the shape of the earth. Okay, so this is another thing that people are talking about, logical fallacies and being disingenuous and stuff like that. Like we keep saying that. Like why do people keep on bringing in things that you're wrong about, and we're debunking as well easily? And even with the moon landing hoaxes and stuff like that, we've debunked it. It's been years. Like people need to fucking sort that out, right? Come to Jesus, not literally, but anyway.
Okay, so I'm actually going to go ahead and pull something up.
Yeah, it's like the weakest point, and then he starts with it
for you guys regarding this specific question.
And I'm getting fired up, but like what? Like they start with the things that are so easily debunked, right? And this like when was that Sibrel podcast with Joe Rogan? Right. So you think like I don't know if that was before or after, but like why does this guy not have access to that information if he's on InfoWars? Right. That's been out for how long? An American Moon. Yeah. See. Yeah. Anyone that knows better knows this guy's like reading off a prompter, and he probably doesn't want to do this, to be honest.
And if you heard my answer, well, actually, let's just play it. Well, I've never seen the other side of the moon, but I would agree that it looks somewhat spherical, sure.
Okay.
But, I've replicated a moon like with polarization where it looks like a sphere. And you can walk over there and put your hand right through it, right? It's a projection. Just with electromagnetic polarization in the atmos, you could have I don't know what the moon is, but I would agree, yeah, it does. It's certainly round and looks like it could be a sphere. I've never seen the other side of it before, so I can't say I know it's a sphere, right? Coincidentally, we see the one side.
But the shadows on the moon certainly make it look like a sphere, right? I mean, unless you have another.
The shadows actually don't always line up. Now, what we're going to show, right?
I was just going to say that.
Is this observation or demonstration. Pretty interesting. So check this out. And this also addresses libration. If you know what libration is, if you video the moon for periods of time, you'll actually see it look like it's kind of wobbling back and forth in a way. Check this out.
Yeah. So some kind of like plasma, I think like some kind of like other state of matter is being utilized for the for these wandering stars, or like cymatics for the other constellations, things like that. I'm thinking is involved for sure. But sonoluminescence, degassed elements, like the higher level precious elements, and so again, like some kind of hot fusion and cold fusion interaction in like between the sun and the moon. And yeah, and so what they're thinking are craters, or it could be some kind of like the bubbles or something like that. Again, these are all just like theories I'm putting out there, because even Copernicus and Newton and Einstein, these people put out theories. Very interesting. Oh my God. If that's fucking true, MC Toon contacted InfoWars and tried to sabotage this debate before they even had it. These people are fucking mad, man. This is what, like, you know what? People should just stop talking with these people or having them on their shows anymore, because like they're literally ridiculous. They're getting so much money off this, and they're fragile little fucking egos can't handle the fact that they're wrong. Okay, so they know if this gets bigger, they've been trying to shut this down now for fucking years. I don't know why. Okay, they're intellectually dishonest to a point where there's people actually dying, and that's what frustrates me, right? And so it's disgusting that these people are doing that. So how can you not see these people as fucking loser pricks? I'm talking about like MC Toon and Craig and Ozian and stuff like that, who actually are paid and propped up to sabotage good human beings, hero types that are risking their life and reputations and all that stuff to get information out that's of service and benefit to humanity. You'd have to be a special kind of fucked up in the head, no offense, to do that, because MC Toon, you're wrong. Craig, you're wrong. And I think you know it. I think you know it. I think you're smart enough to know it. And I think Ozzy and I think you're wrong. And I think you're not smart enough to know it. So if you actually went back and recanted and became a flat earther, I would actually be more surprised with Ozzy than any one of those guys. But that's where I'm at with that. That's just like, why would you fucking like, do we do that? Like anyone like who in the flat earth community that have you heard of where if there's like globe people that go on shows that we try to sabotage them? Even Neil deGrasse Tyson, he goes to all these speaking conventions. So does Buzz Aldrin. So did Neil Armstrong and Bill Nye the Science Guy and all that. Hillary Clinton, like they all have speaking engagements all over the fucking world all the time. None of us are trying to protest at their shows or anything like that. Like none of that. We're not contacting the venues and saying like, you shouldn't have them on. We're not. No one. These people are fucking ridiculous, man. And we're not even criminals. We're actually the good guys. The criminals are actually the ones doing this shit. And they're the ones that like, oh my God. Anyway, I'm getting fired up again. So I got to calm it down.
So obviously that is demonstrating the simple fact that something can appear to be spherical and exactly. It doesn't have to act.
That's why I'm at this. They are on the failing front lines and know it. And there's nothing of substance in the way of the truth getting out. I love it. Oh, love it.
Actually be spherical. I also gave an example of something I've replicated myself where I've created a holographic projection of the moon just using nothing fancy. Just like people hear holograph and they freak out. And it's like, okay, you believe that the sun's not really there when we see it set. If you believe the mainstream model, you believe that we see mountains from hundreds of miles away, but they're not actually there. Basically, everything that we see is an illusion. But someone says the word hologram and people just start ridiculing. If you understood electromagnetic polarization, you just get a little polarized dish and you can project what appears to be a spherical moon. We replicated the craters. We replicated what people call shadows. We replicated the phases. We replicated the color changes. And you can walk right over to it and put your hand through it. You would have swore it was a sphere. What was very interesting about that was as I changed angle, I even have a video of it on my phone somewhere. As I changed the angle, I didn't start seeing other parts of the moon. It just followed me around. And that's very interesting. It does look like the moon that we observe is in an apparent position similar to the sun. And again, that is the case for either situation, which we cover. So anyway, just to address that. And now, obviously, let me say the obvious. This isn't some type of gotcha. Like people are like, yeah, you didn't win the debate. You still can't even tell us what the moon is. That's what someone said in the chat. Like, how is that some type of gotcha?
It's not.
Your side doesn't even agree what the moon is today. They just changed what they claim the moon is made of like a few months ago.
Yep.
They claim they still don't even know what all it's made of. They don't know if there's water there, blah, blah, blah. They claim that 85% of the moon rocks they found on the Earth. Like,
it's true.
Oh, you found a rock on the Earth and then you swore that's what the moon was made of, even though it actually looks different than what we see when we look at the moon. It's totally legit. But again, I personally think, based on what I've seen, that it has plasma characteristics. It's in an apparent position, and that it does have a relationship with the sun, seemingly charging up or something to that effect, where it charges up to the 14 days, and then it starts to discharge for the remaining days. That's what the observations and evidence suggest to me. And it seems to be in a fluid medium as for lunar and celestial waves. So let's keep going. Although none of that matters. Like, I don't have to know what the moon is to be able to do basic geometry of the Earth. And what you'll find is all the globe earthers want.
He just, and this is what I mean, he just destroyed the current interpretation of what the moon is, the alleged moon is, and his explanation of what he thinks the fucking moon is. I in my humble opinion too. So again, this is just my own bias, but like, it's so close. He's like so much closer to the actual truth than anyone else out there. Like literally, like when you're looking at the greats and the geniuses of the past and stuff like that, this fucking guy, just his basic explanation there, just like off the cuff, cuff word. I don't know what the term is in English or whatever, because I come from Quebec. I'm sorry. Sometimes I get the slogans or whatever wrong. And then he's like, but it doesn't even matter. He's like, I just gave you brilliance, genius level fucking intellect, free, you're welcome. And then that doesn't even matter because it has nothing to do with the shape of the earth. It's like, what the fuck? Like, mic drop. Like, what the fuck? Like, anyway, so for someone like me, like, I find that, I'm a nerd though, so I find that so fucking impressive.
But to avoid that like the plague, avoid the radius value and just ask, get like stump a flat earther with a question that they don't know. How could I know what the moon is? According to the official story, people didn't know for sure what the moon was until they allegedly went and landed on it. There were physicists and scientists saying they thought it was plasma in the 60s. Right? But like, oh, no, since you believe NASA claimed they went there, you know what it is now. It's super weird kind of coping mechanism, but let's not take forever on each point.
Another explanation for why the shadow moves the way it does across the moon. I mean, it basically has to be a sphere, right? I mean, are you saying the moon is a projection, or do you think it's a physical object?
I don't know what the moon is. I'm just saying I'm not, like, a lot of evidence suggests that it's not particularly solid, actually. Like, even the Astronomical Society said that they've seen stars through the moon. That's a fact. The Royal Astronomical Society reported observing stars through the moon multiple times. That's just a fact. Could it be wrong? Sure. Was I there? No. But in the 1800s, the late 1800s, the Royal Astronomical Society officially published the claim that stars were observed through the moon multiple times. There are videos that claim to do it. And what do the globe earthers say? Even though it's like, for example, the transit of Venus, it's like right where the transit of Venus would have been. You can see it in that portion of the moon. They say, oh, it's dead pixels. Right. And then we go back and forth on whether or not that's true. They can just say dead pixels, I promise. And it is. And it doesn't even look like a dead pixel. It moves around. Dead pixels don't move around as you move around with your camera. Right. It's a certain portion of the frame. It doesn't stay on the moon in a specific spot. And they claim it's dead pixels. These are modern observations. So I didn't just make that up. Right. I mean, obviously, I know it's not consistent with what people want to believe the moon is. So they can try to ridicule. But I'll just let you know. Ridicule doesn't work. We found that out with the pandemic. You tried to ridicule everyone as science deniers, and how did that work out? So there are things called lunar waves. The Terminator line, sometimes there will be things lit up on the other side of the Terminator line, right? Which shouldn't be happening if it is a solid sphere with the actual shadow. I don't even. And why is that ignored? We've seen things that are seemingly illuminated on the other side of the Terminator line. So we'll just ignore that. That's inconvenient. Yeah. Claim to know that is quote unquote a shadow. We can replicate that with polarized lenses. It can just literally be like a plasma polarized lens, and it could be solid for all I know, and just be optically displaced within a medium. Both models, I think, is when you start hearing the stuff you've never heard, it sounds like I'm just making stuff up. But no, but both models claim that the sun and the moon aren't actually where we see them. Right? That they're apparent. And how would this be where we start off anyway? But this is where people would say you should have immediately said what's in the sky doesn't matter, what stick to the ground. I get it. That's true. But I was just trying to be super good faith, and it's all good. You know, I'm going to show that flat earthers are actually extremely researched on every subject regarding this conversation, while the other side just has to ask questions like, can we agree the moon's a sphere? Ha 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 ha, you're stupid. Different positions. So that's interesting to know. It could be a solid sphere and just not where we see it. Be relative to each observer.
Eden Effie.
Based on their angle to it. So, but this is what I will say that is actually kind of a meme. And normally people do want to like, what's the moon? I don't know, man. I just know that the Earth is not what they said.
That's interesting. I like this theory. I don't know, but this is from could the realm be a projection with the pole star Polaris being the projector? Interesting. The North Pole star Polaris is at the center of this possible Earth plane, this cosmos, and the wandering stars in a perfect pattern throughout the year, by the way, circling around the North Pole star Polaris and the other constellations as well, and light in motion. Yeah, very interesting. Actually, before I carry on, okay, so I need to show this video, and I've shared it before. Countless other people have shared it before, but it needs to be freaking shared, okay? Because this is a lesson learned, people, as well, that we also have to respect our elders and listen, okay, and not be so friggin' egotistical or intellectually dishonest, or, you know, just like that complete cognitive bias, you know, that it's a learned behavior. But this is Charlie Smith. That's not his original name. He is someone that was taken from Africa at 12 years old. Taken, right? The incentive was food or oranges or something like that. I forget what it was. Something sweet. It was either something, I think it might have been something sweet to go on the boat. And so he willingly went, thinking that he was going to be getting this food or whatever this was, and never saw his friggin' family again. Okay, that's friggin' insane. Okay, when you say that stuff out loud, and it is. And he went to Florida and he lived there for the rest of his life. And so he's being interviewed because this is during the moon landing period. Okay, and this guy, Charlie Smith, is the oldest man in America during this time. Okay, and he's also black. He's black and he's the oldest man. And my point to that is, you got to fucking, like, people need to like get like all these like differences that we have, like all this fucking racism and sexism and discrimination, all this shit is bullshit. It's all being propagated by media. Like I said, in 2019 on the record, like with CBC, and misquoted there. And like I've been saying for friggin' years, right? We've all been advanced before. We've all been less advanced before. It depends on the cycle of life, the era that we're in, and the living conditions, again, that we're in, like I've said. And it is also dependent on natural and man-made disasters within areas. And I was very much within a nursing home, like my entire upbringing, because my grandmother did work. She was a co-business owner, I guess you would say, co-manager, but like the one that ran the show of a nursing home. And there was like over, you know, there's always anywhere between 14 and 20 elderly people there that she was taking care of in a home. And that was like the treating, the medications, all the food, the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry, all of that stuff. She took care of all of that stuff, and even hired like a moderate staff to all women to care for, you know, people, you know, during their final years or even decades sometimes, because like they were treated very well. And so I would go there, you know, on my like to see my grandmother and stuff like that, especially if she was watching us, if my mother was working or whatever. And so I would listen, and I'd hear a lot of crazy or amazing stories from people, right? And so even when I was in the well, even in my work now, but even when I was in the military, like I would listen to anyone, right? It had nothing to do with ego or anything like that. It didn't matter your rank or anything like that. If you had something to say, and it was like, I want to hear you. I want to hear you out. I want to understand why you're saying this, and not just dismiss it because like I'm the officer, or I'm better than you, or I have a degree and you don't, or, you know, I'm this skin color and you're not, or whatever. Like that's all ridiculous stuff. Or I'm this biological sex and you're not, right? So, so this is the moon landing. Walter Cronkite, whatever you're going to call it, mainstream media interviewing the oldest man on Earth.
With the spacecraft have been perfect. Here is Bruce Hall. He's with Charles Smith. He's a
Bruce Hall with Charles Smith,
30-year-old former slave who came to this country 118 years ago. He's here for the launch of Apollo 17. Bruce Hall, come in.
We have here among the VIPs one very unusual man. He's at least 130 years old. His name is Charles Smith. And do you believe it really happened? You said they would never go to the moon.
No, they ain't going there. I'll tell them that. And they voted on B, but they have no, you know.
No, they ain't going no moon. That's what he said. Let me see if I can get subtitles.
Never go to the moon.
No, they ain't going there.
No, they ain't going there.
I'll tell them that. And they voted on B, but they have no, ain't nobody going on the moon. No. What they gonna stop up there? What gonna hold that plane up in the air? What is gonna hold it up there?
What is going to hold the plane up in there? He's saying this is some kind of a like this is not a solid object. This guy's a fucking genius. Okay, and this guy looking at him like, oh, you sound like really. You know what? Who's right?
Oh, they've been before.
It's a bunch of money. Oh, of course, I don't blame him for getting it. Just like when the first man killed the president, the first president that was killed, Guitar killed Garfield. There's something they had him. I brought him back. Said, bring it dead or alive. I got him.
They brought back rocks last time when they made a trip to the moon. Do you believe that?
No.
See, he's trying to bait him. That's what people do as well. Like that's what reporters do and journalists do. That's slimy, right? Like people brought back rocks. So in his head, he's like, oh shit, people brought back rocks. Now they have proof. Oh shit, you could get all fucked up with that. Sorry, you can get all messed up with that. And you know what this guy is like? Nope. Nope. I've been through shit. You ain't fooling me. This guy knows. Like it's hilarious that this guy's like, oh my god.
Nope, ain't nobody been there.
You don't believe they've been to the moon?
No. Ain't nobody been to no moon.
Well, Walter, that's the view of a 130-year-old man. Now back to you.
Well, Bruce, Charlie Smith is not the only
And just like the eyes and the eye rolling and stuff like that, or being pushy and stuff like that.
fellow who doesn't believe that man has gone to the moon. It's not as ridiculous a thought as you might think, or any of us might think. Seems a little bit odd now, but I've talked to a lot of people around the world, and some rather intelligent ones who somehow or other just cannot accept the fact and believe that man really hasn't done it, that somehow or other it's a big hoax. I've found them many places. I don't know, maybe you have as well, Wally. And it really isn't anything that unusual. Right at this moment, we're about to get the word.
That was a long time ago. That interview was a very long time ago. I thought people would like that. And if people would have listened to him, he was live on TV. If people would have just friggin' listened to him and followed up and stuff like that, we'd be like in such a different place right now.
Can I ask you a question? Like you said, you're just kind of into observation, right? That's what made me a flat earther, bro. Because I did not want to be a flat earther. Okay, let's just get that out. Like, it discredited everything I ever said. Right? I'm like the conspiracy theorist of my family. So like all of a sudden I'm going to come around saying the most ridiculous thing ever. I'm immediately discredited. So right. I went out and looked. Oh, bro, you can see mountains from 300 miles away. They should be 2-3 miles below Earth curvature, and you can see them.
Well, we'll talk about curvature here in just a second. But again, it seems to me like
that's obviously me pointing out that obviously we have to go to the surface of the Earth and see if it's curving, instead of just looking at the sky and saying, oh man, I swear that this looks like Austin, you're wearing an orange hoodie, so you must be a Freemason. That's hilarious. Anyway, so that was my respectful, polite way of trying to point out that obviously this is technically a red herring from the primary subject.
You can see the moon, and it's pretty clear what it is. It's a rocky body. It's solid. You can see the craters. I mean, powerful telescopes or even, powerful cameras can zoom in quite a bit, and it's not a projection. It seems fairly solid to me. So, to me,
these are just all baseless assertions. We know it's this. That's just a baseless assertion. I just showed you a flat piece of paper looking like a sphere. I just explained we replicated all of that with a polarized lens. You can walk up, put your hand through it. I'll also point out it could literally be a solid sphere that's optically displaced within a medium, and then we see the apparent position. It could also be plasma. So, I mean, I don't know. This is just baseless assertions.
This is, obviously just because the moon is a sphere doesn't mean the Earth is a sphere. And I know the argument that I've heard quite a bit is like, just because pool balls are circular doesn't mean the pool table is circular. Yeah, that's true. Just because the moon is a sphere does not mean that the Earth.
Which he just refuted what Alex Jones comes in and says. It's this big gotcha.
Earth is a sphere, but it might kind of be like a hint, right? It might kind of be a clue. And it sort of means that if you use terms that I've heard where it's like this
a pill to possibility, it might kind of be a hint. It might kind of be a clue. No, it's non sequitur.
Cartoon Earth of some idea of a orb suspended in nothing. It's like, well, that's not actually that ridiculous because we literally see one every day. I think the shadows obviously show that it's a sphere, and then you have things like the eclipse, and you brought up the fact that the sun.
See, that's his best argument is that like, could you just like the Earth is just a sphere hanging in nothing or an orb and nothing? That's not that ridiculous. You see one every day. Touche. We do see what looks like an orb or a circle, or even some would say a sphere that moves around. It's clearly suspended somehow, right, in the air. Sure, right. But that's not. The thing is that we can detect that the moon is moving, and we've used highly precise interferometry on the Earth. It's not. Right. That's the difference. So as opposed to speculation, let's go to empirical measurement.
Is 400 times the size of the moon, but 400 times away. So it's, a perfect match. And yeah, I mean that whether the sun is 400 times.
Lore Lodge is really confident you're going to take it easy on him. I don't know the format, but I'm going to always try to be polite and respectful if there's no moderator because I don't want it to turn into chaos. But let's just say in these coming debates, you're going to see the debate Austin. This wasn't a debate. Let's be real. It was basically an interview that peppered Flat Earther with questions or whatever, and I don't care. I'll take it on.
Or 200 times.
Also, Harrison was pretty respectful leading up to this, and if Lore Lodge is talking reckless or whatever and trying to amp it up, then obviously, it is what it is. I'll reciprocate energy.
Whatever the actual multiplication is, the fact is that with solar eclipses, you can see that the moon is clearly in front of the sun, and yet they're the same size. So whatever that...
During eclipses, you can see that the moon is clearly in front of the sun, except you can't see the moon leading up to it or leaving it, and you can't see the moon ever during the entire eclipse, but you can clearly see that the moon's in front of the sun. And it could be, but we don't actually see that. We don't clearly see that.
Calculus is, the distance is equal to the size difference. You know what I'm saying? So obviously the sun is behind the moon. The moon is an object that is apparently equivalent in size of the sun because of our distance from it and the perspective of it. And again, that sort of,
these are all baseless assertion fallacies.
If you accept that the moon is a sphere that's above the earth, everything else kind of follows. I really think that debunks a lot of flat earth. Because then obviously the moon has to go away for a certain period of time. It matches up with the spinning of the earth. If the moon is a sphere and is a solid object that's floating above the earth and circling around it, that seems to me like it doesn't necessarily prove that we are circling around the sun, but it certainly proves that the earth is a sphere and the moon is circling around us, right? That, to me, again, that...
If the moon is a sphere and we see it blocking the sun, that certainly proves the earth is a sphere. That is completely non sequitur, meaning not sequential. It doesn't follow at all. He even pointed out you can't say the pool table is a ball because there are pool balls. You can't point to the light bulb and say, oh, we must be standing on a light bulb. It's basically the meme of the guy looking at the telescope and say, son, you see those spheres up there? That you see what we see in the sky? That proves the earth that we're standing on is a sphere. He just pointed out that he agreed that that isn't proof, and then he said that it's proof that we're on a sphere.
That's just imminently observable.
Like I said, it could be a sphere. It does somewhat look like a sphere. I will just say stars have been seen through the moon, it appears. I think that reality is way more mind-blowing than we know, and people think they have answers to everything, but really when you look under the hood, there aren't answers for everything. But if we kind of talk about that, if we use like Occam's razor, that which requires the least amount of assumptions is most likely to be true. Doesn't mean it is true. But we see the sun and the moon appear to be the same size. We have a night light and a daylight, and they're the same exact size in such an extent that we can get perfect total solar eclipses. And they claim that that is just a coincidence based on the way that a Mars-sized body hit the Earth and broke it up, and a little piece of debris stuck around the Earth, and then gravity coalesced into a sphere that stopped around 238,000 miles away. Just coincidentally, the size of that rock matches up with the size of the sun optically, even though it's 400 times smaller than it is.
Right, but that
like
I mean,
face,
but that
just
is
say obviously
that is the case, right? I mean,
What? I believe that so much. Like that's why I don't even think that people necessarily have like evil intentions or whatever you want to call it. Most of these people don't care about the truth. I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree with that, because if they cared about the truth, they would have looked more into Austin and his work and his content, because he's had his content out now for years. I think 5 years that I'm tracking. I think at least 4 years that I'm tracking. So correct me if I'm wrong. And I've shared his stuff with literally high level government people that were like, holy shit, guys way older than Austin, that were wise guys that were like, this guy is very wise, and blown away. And people like Jaron too, right? And he has a friggin' tinfoil baseball cap on, wearing a hoodie. And there's 5-star general types, right, that are like looking at his content saying like, not a lot. I'm saying like, it's few and far between, especially in Canada. But the people that are looking at it they're great people, exceptional people, and they're even giving credit where credit's due. They're like, holy shit, these guys are fucking brilliant. Eric Dubé, like there's so like he has fans like at the high levels of government. Certain people that are trying to get the message out too, but they're not getting heard, right? And yeah, guys like even their like 60s and 70s that are like, holy shit, these guys. And like when they're smoking pot, you know, like and these guys like they've gone their whole lives, right? Like never taking any drugs ever, right? And like kicking people out for drug offenses and including pot, right? And so they're just like their whole mind, like their foundations crumble, like not literally, you know, and they take it better than a lot of people would. It's funny though. Yeah, but I think I'm sorry, I gotta get back to this. And having someone, they care about arguing and having someone to point at and believe they are smarter. I believe that that's the case for, yeah, a large majority of them. I'm getting hope now because now there's now InfoWars and Joe Rogan and other people and JP Sears again and other people are sharing information and getting on good guests. Like this year it's gonna change. And it's because we have people that are in the community that are actually taking time out of their day, myself included, to reach out to these organizations and agencies and saying like, hey, can you get Austin on? Do you know this guy? Do you know this guy? Take a look at this video. And then emailing people or contacting people within our networks and our communities, giving them more information, making their cases and their arguments stronger. And that's why like I'm rambling on, but like I watch these videos of Austin. I literally just to assess his like the way he debates, because I think it's brilliant. And so like and so I like assessing that aspect of it as well. So it's not even necessarily just the content. And again, like this guy's a fucking genius. Like there's, you know, obvious, but he's also very tactical in his debate.
The same size perspective
And
as
I
the sun,
appreciate
but clearly
that.
it's not on the same plane as the sun since it passes in front of it.
So that is the case. Okay. Let me just make sure that everyone understands what I'm pointing out. It's called Occam's razor. That which requires the least amount of assumptions is most likely to be true. And specifically, it's when you have two explanations for the same phenomena. So in this case, it is the sun and the moon appear to be the same size. Option A, they're the same size. Option B, that it's just an illusion. Actually, the sun's 400 times bigger than the moon, just coincidentally exactly 400 times further away, so that they appear to be the same size. Okay, so both presented viable explanations as to the apparent size. Occam's razor would dictate that you go with the answer that is void of assumptions, right? Requires the least amount of assumptions and is the least complex. Now, it doesn't always, it's not 100% bulletproof or whatever, but it is a fundamental staple of logic, bro, of logic. You're going to have to empirically verify an alternative claim, dude, right? Like, it's not good enough to just say, like, here's a story that would make it possible, right? That's an appeal to possibility. This is fundamental logic. The sun and moon appear to be the same size because they are the same size, or actually just an optical illusion. The sun's 400 times bigger than the moon, just exactly 400 times further away, to such an extent that we have perfect total solar eclipses, the Stillman of the globe Earth model. Occam's razor would say you obviously go with the fact that they're the same size. That's what we empirically observe. And yeah, it requires the least amount of assumptions that's least complex. That's why I mentioned Occam's razor. And that was just kind of skated past. And then he makes this point. He says, well, that is true. They are optically the same size. Yeah, that's why I'm bringing up Occam's razor. And then he says there must be on a different planes, right? Because he's assuming, again, that the moon is going in front of the sun. It's not necessarily going in front of the sun, but if you were to say that it was, it wouldn't be a problem for flat Earth. And we'll let it play out a little bit longer, and I'll explain it.
So whatever that differential is, it has to be, I mean, that is accurate, right?
Sure, but if it was just barely behind it, it would look like the same size. So they could be very similar distances in the same size, right?
Well, no, they'd have to be a little bit, because they are exactly the same size and different. And again, I don't think that just because the moon is a sphere.
Anyone that would have been a flat earther pre-internet day is like well friggin' done, because there are books out there, like 100 proofs the earth is not a globe, and then the 200 proofs, and Alex Gleason, like I have those books. And I've looked at archived books from hundreds of years ago, but I got that because of internet. and people like Eric Dubé. and suggestions and recommendations that he made and stuff like that, or books that he referenced, and then getting them myself. So like not only hard copies, I think that's important to get a few hard copies of books because in case there's power outages, when the power goes out or things like that. But also, I also have tons of audiobooks on the subject as well.
Fear, that means that
they are exactly the same size and different. Like if the sun was just behind the moon, like just behind it, right? With any telescope, any optical device we have known to man, right? They would look like they're the same size. And it would all be relative to distance and their size, but angular size, you're not gonna be able to tell the difference. And by the way, there are contradictory claims in the globe paradigm. Some claim that it is exactly the same size. Some say it's not quite technically exactly the same size. They're a little different, but it's close enough that we have perfect total solar eclipses. But if everyone understands the point here, if the sun was to theoretically go right behind the moon, if it was really close to it and they're the same size, it's going to look like they're the same size with any optical device known to man. You're not going to be able to tell the difference. It would have to be a significant distance difference, or like a decently significant distance difference.
I trust that they understand how it was created, or I mean, the moon could be hollow for all we know. The whole it rang like a bell when they crashed something into it. I mean, there have been a lot of stories. I don't think we know everything about the moon's entire life cycle, but I do think it's a sphere in the sky, which would hint that there are other spheres in the sky. It would hint that that's a possibility. It would make me question why the moon doesn't fall when everything else falls to Earth because of gravity. It would hint that either it's not affected by the force of gravity or it's being affected in a different way, which to me explains orbit pretty well.
What? He's saying it's either not affected by gravity. Like what? Your model claims that it's free falling through the geodesic path of the bending and warping of space-time, which is gravity. By the way, this is a fact. NASA put out a bunch of pictures of the Earth from space, which is one of the things that they're showing here, called Earthrise. And people did some contrast and forensic analysis and found out that the Earth had been photoshopped in. It then circulated. They pulled the picture and publicly admitted that they had photoshopped it, and they released the PR excuse that, well, they just thought that was a beautiful angle that they weren't able to actually capture while they were there, so they just photoshopped the Earth in. That is a real story, officially, right? Think about that. So they put out a picture mixed in with all these other pictures claiming it was real. It was then proven to be fake. They came out and admitted they photoshopped it, but they weren't going to tell anyone. They were just going to let them think it's real until we caught it. Yeah, very trustworthy group of people there.
Make me question why the moon doesn't fall when everything else falls to Earth because of gravity. It would hint that either it's not affected by the force of gravity.
Oh, yeah. So I'm already well beyond, I haven't seen any of this beyond the first 7 minutes before I started the video. And I'm watching the debrief, by the way, from Austin, because I think that it's way more important for me, in my work. I'm interested in the debrief, the back brief, the AAR, the observations from the person himself based on his own feedback and interpretation of the debate itself afterwards, after processing things, going through it, and then with lessons learned being applied. And so for me, instead of watching that whole debate, I knew he was going to do some kind of a debrief on it. And so if I'm going to spend hours doing this, and I'm doing concurrent things as well, then I want to go to that, right? And so people that are the strategists or the tacticians or whatever you want to call it out there, they're appreciating this.
It's being affected in a different way, which to me explains orbit pretty well, pretty succinctly. I want to show a couple images here, because this again sort of illustrates to me that not only is the moon a sphere, but it's being lit by a light source that is extremely far away. We can go to some of the pictures called Ball and Moon. And there are a couple of these, but you can do it yourself. If you see the moon during the daytime and you hold a ball up, they have essentially the same shadow. It will be cast on the ball as the moon because they're both being lit by the same source, which would be the sun, which would be extremely far away. So
they specifically don't have the same shadow. Look how different that is than that distinct line. We'll periodically read the donation throughout, so don't worry, we'll catch up to them. Those are specifically not the same. And as for eclipses, which no globe earther ever addresses this, I'll even come full screen for this.
A bright blue SUV do proof. That is so freaking hilarious. I actually was thinking about painting my freaking Jeep and my tent on top blue. I just can't afford it right now. I want to do that, but I actually reached out to Josh Bigger because we do chat, like we have each other's numbers and stuff like that, and he's been on Infowars as well. But because he's a roofer, and I'm like, can you make my roof blue or get someone to make it blue? And I'm like. And he was probably going to do this anyways. And he probably thought of this like years ago, but I'm probably one of like a million people that tell him, I'm like, you should advertise and your roofing business should now be doing the blue roofs. Cause there's people in Asia and stuff like that. It's not even just paint, but they're also putting on like, it's like, there's these rolls of like blue, whatever you want to call it, material that you can use where you could just easily, like it just sticks to the roof. And yeah, if you know, you know. Lasers.
Actually, the strongest evidence against the claim that there's a spherical moon passing in front of a spherical sun, right, or that the Earth is a sphere passing in between the sun and the moon in a lunar eclipse, is when you actually replicate that. If you take a sphere and then you block out light to cast a shadow onto another sphere and you move it across the face of the sphere, right, the shadow is not just a circle that goes across the sphere. Because of the convexity of the sphere you're casting a shadow on, it actually creates a sine wave shape of a shadow. It becomes an elongated hump as it goes over the surface. You cannot replicate a sphere casting a shadow on another sphere, creating a perfect circle as you move it across the face. It doesn't do that, right? As it begins to go over the convex surface, it actually stretches out. And this is just a fact. I've never even heard anyone address it. And actually, dude, I got a community noted on X where they're like, oh, actually, S waves are.
See, that's why I was taking notes too, because like he just pointed this out. Like I was taking notes because I'm like, actually, that's really interesting. And I'm like, I want to further look into that. And he just said, I haven't heard anyone else speak about this. And so this is me. I'm not talking out of my ass either. So I wasn't saying anything. I wasn't like, oh yeah, I knew that. Or I'm like, no, I'm taking notes. And yeah, very interesting.
A phenomena in
so
seismology, which I already know that they're P and S waves, specific type of waves in seismology. No, I'm talking about an S wave, a sine wave, the shape of a sine wave, and that's what we were talking about, the shape of the shadow. And then they community noted me for it. Like this is the world that we live in. So anyway, I mean, if someone wants to actually replicate a spherical object casting a shadow on another sphere going across the face of it and the shadow remaining a perfect circle the entire time, please enlighten me, because we have replicated it. Doesn't do that. And that would be direct falsification of the claim that it's actually a sphere of the Earth blocking the light from the sun casting a shadow onto the moon in a lunar eclipse. So this is what like there's one side that diligently tests everything, has been looking into it for years and discovering it doesn't add up. And there's another side that just kind of takes what we've been given, is afraid to look into it, and then tries to find reasons to dismiss it, and then gaslights the other side. So I encourage you not to be that group, regardless of kind of where you are currently on, which side you're currently on.
How would this happen without an extremely far away sun lighting both the ball and the moon?
Well, for one, also another point. Do you see this right here? You see this right here? This is a hot spot, and this is the sun's light, I'm assuming, right? So you see how we actually have a hot spot on a sphere because the light is not evenly distributed on a spherical surface. So you're actually going to have the closest point receiving the light that's going to have a hot spot. We never see a hot spot on the moon. How do you actually even invoke this as a replication when it shows a hot spot, but the moon never does? But on all spheres, there are hot spots. See the bright little circle right there? It's a hot
Never
spot.
seen a hot spot on the moon. Oh my God.
Extremely far away sun lighting both the ball and the moon.
Well, for one, they actually don't look entirely the same, right? You will actually see that there's a gradient of light. Same thing here. You see the hot.
And he's not lying about that. And he's probably going to point it out, but I just want to be clear that it's very obvious. Oh, they freaking cherry pick. Oh my God.
Spot right there.
So misleading.
Pretty similar though.
We call this being intellectually dishonest.
They are somewhat
In the real scientific community, in the real academic, engineering, architect community, this is seen as intellectually dishonest.
similar. Yes. That's how we made the model, right? We looked at the sky and then we created the model over hundreds of years. So of course it matches the sky. It's how we made it, globe Earth model. And it only sort of matches the sky. But the point I'm making there is, this is important. what happened was over the course of hundreds of years, we looked up at the sky and we started designing a Earth model, assuming a sphere, and we had to change it thousands of times. It's still being changed on a daily basis. And like to try to match the sky, we took the sky and made a model of a globe. That's how we made it. To come along hundreds of years later and point to the sky and say, look, the globe Earth model matches the sky. That proves the globe Earth model is true is insane. It's very illogical, fundamentally illogical. That's how the globe Earth model was made in theory. It was designed and crafted by reverse engineering celestial observation to then say, look, it matches celestial observation is ridiculous. Of course it does. That's how it was made. It wouldn't even exist without that as the foundation. So let's actually apply logic, because truth doesn't fear investigation. If the Earth is a tilted, wobbling, spinning sphere flying around the sun, we don't have to be illogical to prove it, right? We should be able to use straight logic and reason to actually verify that.
Yeah.
There could be a relationship between it being lit up, or there are many theories about it. Like everything, it could have an electromagnetic relationship. It could be. Someone said, wouldn't the hotspot just be explained by the glossy texture, though? No, it's been replicated on also a rock, like an actual spherical rock, a giant spherical rock, also still had a hotspot in the sunlight. So it's not just because of the glossy surface. No, sir. Charging up. It could all be within the same energetic cycle above us or whatever. I'm not even saying that they don't have a relationship. Many people have tried to, measure the moonlight and say it isn't hot, and there's all debate about that and stuff. But this is kind of what I was talking about, though. I get that this is probably even a good faith, genuine question. That's how you want to know how everything works. And since we've been given all these alleged answers as to how it works, you think, well, flat Earth has to replace everything I was told is true. But not really. We see a star through the moon. What they said can't be true. Like we just saw that the moon looks blue during the day. And then we showed a picture of the Earth from the moon, which was NASA came out and admitted they photoshopped one of those pictures and didn't tell the public about it, right? Just a second ago that was shown. So I guess what I'm saying is do you agree that if the radius of the globe is falsified, everything else is falsified? So as to a question like, how would the moon work on a flat Earth? I don't know, but it is because we measured the surface of the Earth. I think that is the most important part. And I want to say this one more thing. When it comes to, you're right. It's like, you can't look at the ceiling and say that's what the floor is, right? Mm-hmm. It's even more than that. It's if the Earth is in the center of the entire universe, it would be illogical to think that it's like everything else. It's the only thing that's in the middle. Everything else was created to move around it, right? So that's an important distinction there that most people don't point out. It would be illogical to say the Earth should be like what's in the sky when everything in the sky moves around the Earth. The Earth is distinctly different, right?
But again, we're dealing with two forms of reality: the perception and the actual, right?
So this will actually be the second attempt that I tried to politely move the conversation back to verification or falsification of the radius value. And I'm pointing out that if that R value wrong is the entire model gravity uses.
See, people immediately people pick it up that are not friggin' morons. Like shaking my head. Yeah, I'm shaking my head too. Like we can see it before before Austin even responds. Austin's a friggin' genius. There's no taking no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And so like Dylan, me, countless other people listening to what he just did, completely dismissing everything that Austin just said. I was taking fucking notes. I think I'm pretty friggin' smart and experienced and all that stuff. And again, I'm not bragging. I'm not I give credit where credit's due. And I got my information from people that were helping me out. But I listened. So that's another thing too. Like ego did not get in the way. I'm taking notes, and I'm pretty friggin' smart. And this guy literally just dismissed it. And I'm like, oh my god. Oh my god. Right? Oh, and this is what frustrates people in the community. That's why I have to watch these to desensitize myself, because this completely, to me, I'm like, and this is a thing, like Austin is lowering himself to go on these shows. And I mean, no offense in that he's just at a next level intellect, like the Eric DeBays as well, and the Jarens. And so he's like lowering himself to do these, to help us all out. Right? Literally, that's what he's doing. Like he's being of service. And so like he just needs heavier hitters. Like he needs to have like people that are smarter on the globe side. That's what I'm arguing, right? We don't have good people on the globe Earth side yet. Okay, it's all the same shit with like Craig and Ozian and MC Tunes and like now this guy. And like now they need heavier hitters. Okay, because like there's no one even close. And that's why Bill Nye, that guy, like they've asked repeatedly and tagged him, and so have I, like to do debates. They won't. Neil deGrasse Tyson as well. These people that like go all over the place, they speak to everyone. They won't speak to us. There's a reason for it, because they're not at the same level, even though they pretend they're astrophysicists and all, and like aerospace, whatever. Blech, whatever. You're not as smart as Austin, though. People should be more humble and realize, like, when they're given information, like when they're given gems, to take those gems, because it actually saves lives. I know that's extreme, but information and the truth that they just so happen to want, right? It starts with listening to people like Austin.
That value, day and night cycle, everything about the model uses the R value. If that is wrong, it's the most concise or the most precise and efficient way to test the claim that the Earth is a sphere and this model is true, to test the radius value. Some people will find out, they'll start seeing the evidence, they'll say, oh, well, that doesn't mean the Earth's not a sphere, maybe it's just a bigger sphere. No. That changes distances on the Earth, the day and night cycle, everything falls apart immediately. It can't just be a bigger sphere. So I tried to push it back to that again. And then the other point that I was making is, when you're having a debate, if you're talking about the other side and you're like, well, if the Earth was flat, that wouldn't make any sense because look at the stuff in the sky, it's a sphere. Well, for one, you can't point to the sky and say that's what the ground is. We've covered that multiple times. It's like pointing at a light bulb and saying, look, that's a light bulb. The ground must be a light bulb. It's insane. Have you ever been to a planetarium? It would be like looking up and saying the ground must be, a curved surface made of lights. It's like, no, you're on the flat ground. The pole ball analogy as well. But even more than that, if you're going to attack another position or claim to debunk it or refute it, you have to stillman it. Okay. And so that's the opposite of straw manning it. Right. So obviously stillman is presenting the strongest form of that argument. And if you're saying, well, it doesn't make any sense for the Earth to be the one thing that's different than everything else, that is not a stillman, because the flat stationary Earth claim is that the Earth is not moving, therefore the universe is geocentric, which means it would be the Earth in the center, everything moving around it. You may not believe that, right? You may think it actually isn't in the center, whatever. But if you're claiming to rebut this other idea, you have to actually articulate what the idea is properly, or you're just straw manning the argument. So to say that it's illogical to think the Earth wouldn't be like everything else, in this position, it's not illogical, it's actually intrinsic, because the Earth being geocentric means it's the only thing in the center. It's distinctly different from everything else. So it would be illogical to claim it should be like everything else. It's fundamentally not like everything else, right? It has the singular, special, and unique position of the center. That's an important part. My point is, what I found out is this conversation, logical people all of a sudden throw logic out the window. And again, I'm going to reiterate, if the Earth really is a sphere like they claimed it is, there's no reason that we can't logically assess it and then prove it. That is why flat earthers exist. You can't do that. You actually are not going to be able to do that. You're going to have to use logically fallacious reasoning to claim that the Earth is a sphere. And I'll ask this question to the chat or whoever. Can anyone provide actual empirical evidence that verifies the Earth is in fact a sphere, that the globe model is true, void of logically fallacious reasoning? And I've had people try, and no one can ever do it. They always just give me logical fallacy.
So it looks like everything's circling around us, but that would also be the case if we were spinning. It would look like everything was circling around us. That would mean it was circling around us. Again, it doesn't seem to me like there's any evidence that Earth is the center. I mean, what about the mapping of planets? Because I know one of the things, again,
so instead of addressing the point I'm making, which is it's illogical, the point I just made, he says that there's no evidence that the Earth's in the center. It's like, bro, you're supposed to be saying why this position wouldn't work. Your argument was that look at the stuff in the sky. And I'm pointing out you can't prove what's on the ground with the sky. And it doesn't make sense anyway from our position, the Earth's in the center. And then he responded by saying, I've seen no evidence the Earth is in the center. So that's not addressing my argument, right? But
because he hasn't looked at it. Because even the original, like the first original, what do you want to call it? Representations or diagrams of the world from Eudoxus, if that person even existed in this cosmos, whatever, like with the Earth in the center, flat plane of inertia, some kind of a dome, firmament or dome, you know, and with what I was discussing with like the sun and the moon and the other constellations and wandering stars traveling, you know, creating like the circular paths that creates the sine wave, amplitude, freaking time and distance. And then after him as well, like countless other people, like Hypatia, who was a woman, if she even existed. He was also, you know, in her time, seen as a brilliant astronomer, mathematician, scientist, and also someone that believed in and taught the geocentric model, and then closer again to what I believe to be the reality of the world, and people like Copernicus and Aristotle and Socrates actually even on the record admitting that they were inspired by the likes of Eudoxus and stuff like that, and most certainly bastardized the explanation because they were not intelligent enough, wise enough to formulate the same opinion. So they're like, oh, like I can't understand that level of intellect, so I'm just going to like you know, do my own explanation of it and be completely wrong and not care, you know, and if I'm making money and like get like fame and ego and stuff like that, stroked it in the process, then it's just like a win-win or whatever. But I've shown this before as well, like that throughout history, even Copernicus' time, if he existed, and these others like Newton and Einstein, there were multiple other people, greats, like even Kepler's time, Tycho Brahe, who was a geocentrist. And then you got Robotham and countless others, again, like the greats of their time that were saying that this is a flat plane of inertia.
Like I said, I actually prioritize amicability. I didn't care if people took false victory laps. It's all good.
We have an image of this motion of solar system planets relative to Earth. So basically, this would be the orbital path that the other planets would take, Mars, Venus, you know, all these other planets. If Earth is assumed to be the center, and they're like, you know, spirals. They're like, they move around a lot. And if the crew can pull up that picture, motion of solar system, we can pull it up on my screen. So, you know, how do you explain these paths and this motion?
And when I see this, I laugh. Because he's mapping out like the perfect friggin' shape or pattern that these luminaries friggin' make in the sky on a regular basis, mapped out through the year. Just like the sun and moon have their own friggin' perfect path that they make. Right, this is how it's like mapped out, like as they're traveling, like on the you got the daily path that gets mapped out, and then you got the annual path. Right, this is the annual path, and how would this be possible if there was some kind of a fucking big bang, like people are alleging there is? I do believe that this is some kind of a motion picture or video game that needs some kind of like the energy source. Like I'm not denying that at all. All right. And so, but the Big Bang, like I believe that to be the electromagnetism that creates this cosmos, right? And like whatever that, like whatever's creating that energy source, you know, is interacting with center mass or the center of the plane of inertia, and then also with like the luminaries, like you know, above that are also, you know, assisting in creating this cosmos, right? So again, a divine creator or architect, at least one, created this cosmos. Okay, so like making it seem like, you know, there was like some kind of an explosion in the universe, and like that's how the sun and the moon and all these like constellations and luminaries were created, to me is nonsensical. And I mean, no offense in that. And even with the conservation of angular momentum, through this Big Bang theory that they're discussing and stuff like that, there would be no possible way of duplicating this. This is not an accident. This is not based off of some kind of an explosion. Prove that. Right? In my humble opinion. And the fact that you can map out the the movements, it's just more like that should prove to you that this is a divine creation. And people are not thinking about things like the inverse square law. They're not thinking about things like conservation of angular momentum. They're not thinking about like the individual. And that's what Copernicus and Einstein and Newton were alleging to as well. They were saying that like the only thing that we can predict is the movement of the Earth, and that the sun is fixed. Like these people were saying all these nonsensical things, and we've proven that's not true, just by virtue of trusting your fucking senses. And I've explained the sun's path countless times, but you know, moving 15 degrees on average approximately every hour through the zodiacal belt, through the day and then through the year. And then when you map it out, it forms a sine wave. And never going further than 23.4 degrees north or south latitude of the equatorial ring. And again, on a daily basis, going through the zodiacal belt from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. if you want to start from the left and through Aries as the sun's average approximate path. And then that's why, this clock, this 24-hour clock, is actually a better representation of this divine cosmos clock. So that's what we're in. This is what this is. Time is the dimension that makes this motion picture operate or move, right? That's the fourth dimension, in my humble opinion. I've talked about that before. Anyways, I'll let them keep talking. Sorry.
Without
all these tangents.
force acting on the planets other than gravity, I mean, how do you have a planet going towards and away from us if they're circling around us?
Well, there is a force. Automatically, there's some type of force, right? Because everything's moving around. If you look at a Ferrel cell image of a magnetic field, so it's just a creative invention that was made, used 2 little pieces of glass, you put ferrol fluid and another fluid inside of it, line it with LED lights, and you can see the magnetic field. Right. It makes that exact. Specifically, you can see the distribution of the ferrol fluid in response to the magnetic field, and then based on that distribution, the light illuminates the field lines. Same pattern. The torus field, sacred geometry, the golden ratio. That torus field, every one of those planets pass perfectly within a torus field. And of course, the heliocentric side's explanation for this is it's just a coincidence, which is pretty ridiculous because we see this same. Okay, now he said it's just random squiggly lines, like little spirals, random squiggly lines. I pointed out these are not random squiggly lines. This is the most common geometry found in all of nature. It's sacred geometry, the flower of life. It's the geometry of a torus field. It is therefore objectively not just random squiggly lines. It's a very specific, coherent pressure mediation geometry. So like intellectual honesty would dictate you say, okay, I didn't know that, or that's interesting, that's fascinating, right? I'll pull up my X post in just a sec as we play a little bit longer. You see the same geometry everywhere.
But how can it match perfectly when each planet is a different path? I mean, they can't all match perfectly because they don't match each other.
Yeah, but within a torus field, there are
exactly
multiple different.
Think about that. Think about that. They all have their own individual perfect friggin' path or pattern that they take. That's unrelated to each other. God, they need smarter people to discuss things like this with Austin. It shouldn't even be like a committed globe earther. Again, like you shouldn't be like committed to your stance. Like you should be open to listening and thinking critically after acquiring new information, new data. I just get so insulted for Austin. Sorry.
Right, so if you look at a Ferrel cell image, and I could maybe pull it up, but you look at a magnetic field, you're going to see that all of those patterns are in there individually. And basically, each one of these quote unquote planets are taking their own path within this torus field. They all fit within it perfectly. Yeah, there are many different paths within it. So what we'll do is we'll come over here and I will actually pop this up. Okay, so that's a little small. See if I can. Okay. So I said it's always funny to hear people just mindlessly regurgitate that a geocentric flat earth cosmology doesn't have a working model. The truth is we have a significantly better model, and it's not even close. The path of the planets and satellites from a geocentric plane position perfectly overlay onto the torus field geometry of a magnetic field. The magnetic flux data on Earth also perfectly matches the vortex in the center of the magnetic field geometry. Further, this vortex motion has been empirically verified with incredibly precise interferometry measurement. This torus field geometry is observed throughout all of nature, from the smallest to the largest scale. So we have a model that unifies all scales of physics and perfectly matches observation and measurement. The alternative claim is that this is all merely coincidence and illusion. Space-time, dark matter, and dark energy are tricking us. Trust me, bro. Tough decision. And that's a still man, right? It's somewhat facetious, but it is a still man. It is that the combination of space-time and the bending and warping of these concepts and dark matter and dark energy and accelerative expansion are creating this illusion that tricks us into thinking that we're in the center, but we're really not. right? And because of the need to keep on to this relativistic framework, it has separated the quantum scale from the local scale from the cosmological scale and had to plug in dark matter and stuff to try to keep the cosmological scale alive. Now, here is a Ferrel cell image. Okay, and this, you'll see that these patterns fit directly in that. And I'll pull this up in just a second to show it even further. I'll open this up. So you'll see this is Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and all of them fit within this at different places. And this is another Ferrel cell image right here. This is a Ferrel cell image top down, and this same vortex is in this image right towards the middle. I guess you can't see my mouse. So in the bottom left, you'll see the vortex. These are just Ferrel cell images of a magnetic field. You'll see the magnetic flux data on a plane Earth matches that. We've actually measured the vortex with interferometry, right? And it changes with altitude. It actually increases as you get closer to the sky, etc. So what's interesting is that you can take the ISS path here and towards the bottom right, and it also matches. So all the planets perfectly match this geometry. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to come over full screen, and we'll go to... actually, we'll just do it this way. Let me find the PowerPoint. Okay. And we'll close that. So if I pull this same PowerPoint back up, I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. So I pointed out in this PowerPoint that this is the natural design seen in all of nature. The flat Earth geocentric cosmology is so much more beautiful, elegant, and viable. It's not even close. I wasn't just saying that, and I wasn't being hyperbolic. This is the natural design seen in all of nature because of pressure mediation. So you see it in all these plant life, vegetables, et cetera, and these fruits. This is what they claim that the actual geometry of an atom is. Now, I won't get into destroying atomism right now. I have a stream on it. I'll do one in the future. But the phenomenon is real. The materialistic, quantified perception of it is not necessarily real. It's a model that's reified. But this is a general pressure mediation pattern that's seen on the quantum scale. What a coincidence. So here we see it in nature again. Here we see it in nature once again. And I won't read off all of them. We'll do a future presentation. But this is the geometry. If you look up here, you have the vortex inside of it. So basically like an hourglass, right? It's called a hyperboloid. And you have the toroid, the outside. They're overlapped. They're connected. The inside, there's a portion of it that's moving in towards the center. There's a portion moving out because magnetic fields are incredibly meticulous, fields. And they are like the field, the one true field. So again, it's a top view of a Ferrel cell image right here. And here you'll see the actual patterns. And this is what I was explaining to him. There are multiple patterns within a torus field, right? Depending on the amount of rotations within that torus field, there are different field lines. Here's sound creating the same exact patterns, right? With cymatics, it's the material displacement due to vibration creates the same patterns. Here are piano notes actually doing the same thing to water, right? All right, we won't go through the actual presentation, but here is the same Ferrel cell image. And here we'll get to a few more. We'll move on. These are what people call cells. We won't get into that whole rabbit hole either, but what a coincidence. We see the same geometry biologically. Here is a Ferrel cell image, and you see the vortex very clearly with the overlapping flower of life. You see where these intersect here. I hope you can see my mouse. Yeah, where you see these intersect here, they create like a point, right? Now they're actually just curving up, but they intersect and make a point. That's why it's called the flower of life, because it looks like a flower, like petals of a flower. Here is a time lapse of the star trails. Wow, what a coincidence, right? And then I go through a bunch of things that people claim are impossible on a flat Earth, which they're obviously not. Here's the apparent solar eclipse. What a coincidence. It matches the Ferrel cell with the magnetic field viewer.
I love it.
Here's the path of the moon over a plane Earth. This geometry is seen everywhere.
Yeah. Love it.
So this would be the actual depiction. So
I've shared that picture that he just shared too, like even on thumbnails of videos and stuff. I love it.
It's important to understand this. I think I actually cover,
because even we
this
create
is
our
Einstein
own
admitting that we've never proved
electromagnetic fields. Like even we do.
That the Earth is moving and everything happens as if it's not. Here are all the actual things to back up what I said about the empirical measurement of the vortex. You can go look all these up. You can also go to my Telegram, t.me/misswits. You can also go to t.me/Witsit streams to get a lot of the resources that we talk about here. But these are all empirical interferometry measurements that have shown that, the actual interferometry measurements change based on the altitude and based on the periodicity of the sun and the moon. None of these things should happen on a spinning globe. We don't have time to get into all that. Here's another depiction of it so you can wrap your mind around it. You have the two different conjugate geometries. Okay, and again, here is all the planets from the Earth in the center, and you see that flower of life geometry.
Yeah.
It's not random squiggly lines. It is the geometry seen in all of nature, from the small scale to the big scale.
I've said this a million times. Electromagnetic field being projected on a flat plane of inertia via hyperboloids and toroidal fields.
And when you don't have to assume the Earth is flying through space, you introduce an etheric background where everything is interconnected, and you have a grand unified theory, a theory of everything. Literally, it unifies all of physics that's currently at a standstill. We have a significantly superior model. It's not even close. This is not a random pattern. This is what is seen in nature due to pressure mediation, vibrational displacement, and magnetic. Here's Mars from a geocentric position. Again, the flower of life geometry. Here's a geocentric path of all the planets. Again, flower of life geometry. Nothing about this is random. So I want to point that out to misconception, because people see the circles and they're like, oh, that's so cool. It's like, yeah, you threw yourself within the torus field and claimed you're moving around in relation to the other things moving. Of course, you're going to get circles. That's how it works, because there's a vortex. But these things follow field lines within it. It's very important to grasp this. So,
yeah.
And then what we can actually do also real fast is
it's very,
we'll go
very important
here and pop this back up. And then I'll show you what I dropped down below as well. I explain. The central portion of the field is called a block domain wall. This is the official name because it's named after the guy who discovered the plane in the middle of the magnetic field. So his name was Block, his last name. Or can accurately be described as an inertial plane. Inertia means unchanging. So it's a plane that remains constant. It's unchanging, an inertial plane. Within the true Earth model being proposed, this would be where the Earth is located. The observed celestial phenomena reference would be taking place within the upper half of the field. So you see this would be the plane of inertia, the inertial plane, or the block domain wall. Here you see it in the frail cell image. You can also use a magnetic viewing film, and you'll see there's just like a gap, a white gap in the magnetic film over the magnet that has a plane of inertia. It's called a block domain wall. It's a well-known phenomena, and you would be experiencing the top half of this. It has a vortex, and you have all of this other geometry, this conjugate geometry. It perfectly matches what we see on Earth from the Earth as a geocentric position. So I just thought it was important to cover that real quickly.
Very
Let's
important.
continue.
So
you
impressive.
said that you don't see any evidence that the Earth's in the center. You are aware that the current model says you could never prove that the Earth's not in the center, and that all astronomical observations make it appear as if the Earth is in the center of the universe, but
Right.
that's just an illusion.
Well,
So
it's
it's a
an illusion because we're on Earth, and this is our only platform from which to observe space.
Sure, and it gets a little bit more complex than that, though, because even like the distant galaxies moved in relation to the Earth, right? And so then that's when Edwin Hubble was like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. And they had to say the whole universe is accelerating and expanding in all directions to create that illusion. And then they're like, wait, what caused... And respectfully, I feel like he's not listening.
I was just going to fucking say that.
Respectfully, right? I mean...
Again, like I was just gonna say that I'm looking at him. He's so distracted. He's looking off and stuff like that. I'm like, that's why I was literally just paying attention to Harrison, like whatever his name is. I'm like, this fucking guy is not even listening. Like it's so obvious to people.
Like, I feel like he's kind of not listening.
Yeah.
To observe
Yeah.
space.
So I'm yelling again. I'm sorry.
Sure, and it gets a little bit more complex than that, though, because even like the distant galaxies moved in relation to the Earth, right? And so then that's when Edwin Hubble was like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. And they had to say the whole universe is accelerating and expanding in all directions to create that illusion. And then they're like, wait, what causes that to happen, though? There has to be some type of energy that would make it expand faster than the speed of light. And that's where you get dark energy, which is never been discovered, defined. It'll never be found. And then you have dark matter to fix the gravity problems. I will actually say you can use a Lorentz magnetic force, to not get too technical, but it's pretty funny that you can show what's called a dynamic equivalence, meaning the way that the force makes objects move around each other from a geocentric universe. And it's a magnetic Lorentzian force. And what a coincidence, the patterns of the planets fit perfectly within a magnetic field's geometry. So it's more elegant.
Well,
Okay,
so
but
smart.
but none of that actually explains what the force is moving it, or how it's set on this path. And the other thing is that you would also get paths.
Like, am I tripping? Like, didn't I just name a force?
Oh my God.
So it's more
but-
elegant, actually.
Okay, but none of that actually explains what the force is moving it, or how it's set on this path. And the other thing is that
None of that explains what this force is
yeah.
moving it or how it's set on this path. Like, brother, I just explained both of those things explicitly. Right? So I invoked a Lorentz magnetic force. Here it is. I end up invoking this very book here, from a professor. In relational mechanics, we can interpret this rotation as an analog of the magnetic Lorentz force law. In this case, the spinning set of distant galaxies generates a gravitational magnetic field, which exerts a force on the moving masses. There are the equations. And it's saying that the Foucault's pendulum can no longer be utilized as proof of the Earth's real rotation. In relational mechanics, both facts can be equally explained with the frame of distant galaxies at rest, exerting a gravitational force on bodies at the Earth's surface while the Earth rotates relative to this frame, or with the Earth at rest while the distant galaxies rotate around it, exerting a gravitational force on bodies at the Earth's surface. Both explanations are equally correct and yield the same effects. It then becomes a matter of convenience or of convention to choose the Earth, the distant galaxies, or any other body of frame of reference to be considered at rest. Now, specifically, and it's important to understand this, we do not actually believe the claimed distances and the sizes and the vacuum and all this stuff.
You believe the Earth is spinning.
The point is that it's to dispel this notion that the geocentric model's been disproven or something, not even close. And even a pendulum wouldn't be proving that the Earth is rotating either within that own model. So within your own model, there's an equivalence, both a kinematic and dynamic equivalence. And what a coincidence. Now you could apply this to any distances, any sizes, and any different medium, because the difference with gravity is it's limited to mass. So a certain amount of mass, certain amount of gravity, right? And that's why they have dark matter, which was originally called missing mass. Okay, it was then changed to dark matter because that's just way too blatant of a name. It was discovered by Fritz Zwicky in 1933. He looked at the Coma cluster and saw that it only had 1% of the mass that was supposed to be there according to the gravitational prediction. It was missing, it was off by 99%. So they plugged the value in and called it missing mass. It was later called dark matter. Still, no one knows what it is. No one can define it. No one can find it. A lot of astronomers and astrophysicists dispute that it exists. People are proposing modified Newtonian dynamics to get away from having to claim that it exists because there's no evidence for it. And we can get more into that. I covered a lot in Relatively Speaking, the series that I currently have paused.
As well.
We get all into all of that, how actually, even if you assume dark matter is true, it's been falsified with dark matter.
We are not correctly describing the this gaseous atmos, whatever you want to call it, that we're living within, and with nitrogen, oxygen, all that other stuff, carbon, different elements on the periodic table. And so we need to discuss things like the ether and these gases relative to the environment.
Halos and how there's no viscosity as they actually intersect and all this stuff, right? But the point is, and you're going to find this is a reoccurring theme, that the true earthers are extremely researched. That's why we are flat earthers, quote unquote. Okay, but this is the point that I'm making. The difference is with the gravity, it's certain amount of mass, certain amount of gravity. You're very limited. It's dependent upon proportionate mass. Now with the magnetic force, right? It's not, because you can have two magnets that are the same size, right? They're the same mass, but one can have a way stronger field than the other, right? Just because of the magnetic field strength, it could be the same size, but it's completely different, which means you can put bodies at any different distance and any different sizes and just change the magnetic properties, and it'll have a proportionate strength to that field, right? So magnetic force in the sky fixes all kinds of problems. What I was pointing out was, like, even within the paradigms of dynamic equivalence, and this is still a bit higher level, but I'm not going to dumb it down forever. I was just trying to keep it somewhat layman terms for the people that may be open-minded. I think I did enough to where an honest truth seeker will try to come and find more information. But And hopefully there'll be a follow-up. What I'm trying to point out, though, is you should familiarize yourself with these terms: dynamic, kinematic. Kinematic is how an object moves in relation to another. So Austin walked around the pole in a circle. That's kinematic, right? Geometry, paths, how things move, like the paths they take. Dynamic would be the force that was used to make Austin move around the pole. That's dynamic, the force that causes that motion. There's a kinematic and dynamic equivalence, meaning if the Earth's in the center and you believed in relativity, or you believed in Newton, right? Or you believed in gravity as they tried to claim it exists, you still couldn't say that the Earth's not in the center. It actually works better with it in the center. And the point I was making is that a Lorentz magnetic force can be applied to this with an equal and opposite reaction. We won't get into the technicalities of it. And what a coincidence, right? He asked about the force. I said a Lorentz magnetic force. And I explained what a coincidence that the paths actually fit right within a magnetic field. And then he replied to that by saying, well, that still doesn't explain what the force is or how they move in that path. That's specifically what it just did. Specifically, I did that very thing. I proposed a force, which is a magnetic force. And I explained that, of course, the paths fit right within the torus field because that's what a magnetic field's geometry is. So that explains the paths and the force, and also explains everything rotating around it as there's a vortex in the magnetic field.
Yep.
So I specifically explained both of those things. I don't claim to know exactly what's up there, right?
Exactly.
But we have way more viable models. It's not even close. Yeah. We don't need dark matter, dark energy, the inflaton. We don't need all this crazy made up nonsense that doesn't exist. So I know that was a lot. So
yeah, that was a lot. He's going to go on. I am so busy this week. I have so much to prepare for and things to do. And so it was a long stream again today, but I will leave it at that. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.